They told me prison would break me. They were wrong. What broke me was the silence of my own son. Not a letter, not a visit, not even a single question asking if I was alive. For 2 years, I counted time by the cracks in the wall and the echoes of footsteps that were never his. And every night before sleep finally dragged me under, I asked myself the same question. How does a son erase his own father so easily? I still remember the day everything began to change. But back then, I thought it was just life moving forward. I didn't know it was the beginning of something darker. My name doesn't matter anymore, not in the way it used to. Once I was just Baba to him, his hero, his safety, his home. My son, Ayan, was all I had left after my wife passed away. He was young then, barely 10, but he held my hand at the funeral like he was the one trying to keep me together. "Don't worry, Baba," he whispered that day. "I'll never leave you." And for years he didn't. We built our life from scratch. A small house, a modest routine. Every morning I'd wake him up for school, pretending to be strict, and he'd groan like I was ruining his life. Every evening he'd come home and tell me everything, every joke, every test, every little victory. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that was enough. When he grew older, things changed, but not in a bad way. He became more independent, quieter sometimes, but still respectful, still caring. Or at least, that's what I believed. The first time he mentioned her, it sounded like nothing. "There's someone I want you to meet," he said casually over dinner. I smiled. Ah, so it finally happened. He rolled his eyes, embarrassed. "It's not like that." But it was. Her name was Mira. The first time she walked into our home, she carried herself with a kind of quiet confidence. Polite, soft-spoken, almost too careful with her words. She greeted me with respect, helped set the table without being asked. Smiled just enough to seem warm, but never enough to reveal what she was really thinking. At first I liked her. Any father would. She seemed like someone who could take care of my son when I no longer could. But there were moments, small ones, that didn't sit right with me. The way she observed everything. The way her eyes lingered on things, not with appreciation, but calculation. The way Ayan seemed different around her. Less like himself, more like someone trying to prove something. I ignored it. Because love changes people, I told myself. And who was I to question his happiness? Months passed, and she became a regular part of our lives. Ayan started coming home later. His phone was always in his hand. Conversations became shorter, more distracted. But whenever I asked, he would reassure me. "Work is just stressful, Baba. Don't worry so much. You always overthink things." Maybe I did. But there was one evening I couldn't shake. We were sitting together, just the two of us. It had been a while since that happened. I made his favorite tea, hoping to bring back a little of what we used to have. He took a sip, distracted, scrolling through his phone. "You've changed," I said gently. He looked up, slightly annoyed. "People grow, Baba." "Yes," I nodded. "But they don't forget who they are." Something in my tone must have reached him, because for a moment, just a moment, I saw my son again. Soft, thoughtful. "I haven't forgotten," he said quietly. Then his phone buzzed. And just like that, the moment was gone. Mira started coming over more often after that, sometimes when Ayan wasn't even home. At first, she said she just needed to pick something up. Then she stayed longer, sat in the living room, asked questions about the house, about our past, about my work. Things that felt oddly specific. "You've done well for yourself," she said once, looking around slowly. "It's just a simple home," I replied. "But it's yours," she said, her voice soft but sharp underneath. I didn't know why. But that sentence stayed with me. There was another thing. Paperwork. One evening, Ayan came to me with documents. "Just some formalities," he said. "Work-related. I need your signature as a witness." I trusted him. I didn't even read everything properly. Why would I? This was my son. The same boy who once refused to sleep unless I told him stories. The same boy who promised he'd never leave me. So I signed. Without hesitation. Without doubt. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. And slowly, quietly, something shifted in the air of our home. Conversations became shorter. Silences became longer. And the warmth we once shared began to fade into something cold. Something distant. I started noticing how often Mira whispered to him, how their conversations would stop the moment I entered the room, how decisions were made without including me anymore. It wasn't sudden. That's what made it worse. It was gradual, almost invisible, like a shadow growing inch by inch until it consumes everything. The night before everything changed, I couldn't sleep. I don't know why. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fear finally finding its voice. I walked past Ayan's room and noticed the light was still on. Their voices were low, tense. "You promised," Mira said. "I know," Ayan replied, frustrated. "Just give me time." "There is no more time." A pause. Then something that made my heart stop. "If you don't do it now," she whispered, "we lose everything." Silence followed. Heavy, suffocating. I stood there, frozen, my hand against the wall. I wanted to walk in, to ask what they meant, to demand answers. But I didn't. Because somewhere deep inside, I already knew. Something was coming. Something I wasn't ready for. The next morning, Ayan was unusually quiet. He avoided my eyes. His hands trembled slightly as he poured tea. "Are you okay?" I asked. He nodded too quickly. "Yes, just tired." Mira wasn't there, but her presence lingered. Like a shadow that hadn't left the room, Ayan sat across from me, staring at the table. Then slowly, hesitantly, he reached into his bag and pulled out a set of documents. "Baba," he said, his voice barely steady, "I need you to trust me again." I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize the person sitting in front of me. "Trust," I repeated softly, "isn't something you ask for, Beta. It's something you protect." His jaw tightened. "It's important," he insisted, pushing the papers toward me. My fingers hovered over them. Something inside me screamed not to touch them, but something else, something older, deeper. The love of a father who had never said no to his son. That part of me reached forward. And just before my fingers made contact, I noticed one line, one single line, buried in the text. And everything inside me went cold. I didn't know it yet. But that moment was the beginning of my fall. And the day I signed those papers was the day my own son stopped being my son. The line I saw, it didn't shout. It didn't warn me. It just sat there quietly, cold, official, and final. My name, his name, and words that didn't belong between a father and a son. I looked up at Ayan, my fingers still hovering above the paper. "What is this?" I asked, my voice calm, too calm. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes flickered, not to me, but to the door. Like he was expecting someone, or afraid someone might hear. "It's just documentation," he said finally. "Legal structure. Nothing complicated." "Then explain it," I replied. A pause. A long one. "It's to transfer some responsibilities," he said, choosing his words carefully. "Temporary. Just for convenience?" Convenience. That word echoed in my mind like something hollow. "For whose convenience?" I asked. His jaw tightened. "Baba, please, don't make this difficult." That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not anger, not yet. Just awareness. "I've never made anything difficult for you," I said quietly. "Not once." He looked away, and that hurt more than anything he could have said. I picked up the papers again. This time I read more carefully. Legal authority, financial control, property reassignment. It was all written in language designed to confuse, to blur lines, to hide intention behind formality. But I understood enough. Too much. "You want everything transferred," I said slowly. "It's not like that." "It is exactly like that." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Silence filled the room again. Heavy, thick, unavoidable. And then, the door opened. Mira walked in like she had been waiting for this moment. Not surprised, not curious. Prepared. "I think we should be honest now," she said softly, stepping beside Ayan. Her presence changed everything. Whatever hesitation he had left disappeared. He straightened slightly, as if standing beside her made him stronger, or maybe just less alone in what he was about to do. "Baba," he began again, but this time his voice was firmer. "This is necessary." "For what?" I asked. "For our future." "Our. Not his, not mine. Theirs." I looked between them, and suddenly all those small moments, The whispers, the questions, the distance. They came together like pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. "You've already decided," I said. Neither of them denied it. "I trusted you," I continued, my voice quieter now. "Not because you're my son, but because I believed in who you were." Ayan's expression flickered. Just for a second. Guilt. But Mira spoke before it could grow. "We're not doing anything wrong," she said calmly. "Everything is legal." Legal. Such a clean word for something that felt so dirty. "Legal doesn't mean right," I replied. "It means protected," she said. That word landed differently. Protected. From what? From me? "I won't sign this," I said finally. The air changed instantly. Ayan stiffened. Mira's expression hardened, just slightly, but enough. "You don't understand the situation," Ayan said. "Then help me understand," I replied. He hesitated again. But this time, he didn't look at me. He looked at her. And whatever silent conversation passed between them in that moment, it ended something. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," Mira said, her tone no longer soft. I felt it then, that cold edge beneath her politeness, finally uncovered. "I think you've already made it as hard as it can be," I answered. Ayan exhaled slowly, running his hand through his hair. "I didn't want it to go like this," he said. "Like what?" I asked. He didn't respond. Instead, he stepped back. Just one step, but it felt like a distance I could never close again. What happened after that didn't feel real. It felt like watching someone else's life from far away. Voices I didn't recognize. Words that sounded familiar but meant something else. A room that was once mine, suddenly feeling chugé. There were more papers, more conversations, more pressure. I said no, again and again. And every time I did, something in Ayan's eyes faded. Until finally, there was nothing left. Days later, everything collapsed. Not with noise, not with chaos, but with a quiet, controlled precision that I never saw coming. People came, not angry, not aggressive, just official. Calm voices, measured explanations, documents presented like facts, decisions already made. I tried to speak, tried to understand, but every word I said felt smaller than the system already set in motion. And Ayan, he was there, standing behind it all, not leading, not stopping, just allowing it. I searched his face one last time, for hesitation, for regret, for anything that might tell me this wasn't real. But all I found was distance, cold, quiet distance. "I didn't think you'd do this," I said to him. He didn't reply, not even then. Time lost meaning after that. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months, and eventually into 2 long, silent years. No visits, no calls, nothing. Just the memory of a son who once held my hand, and the reality of a man who let it go. But prison didn't break me. It gave me something else. Time. Time to think. Time to remember. Time to see everything clearly, without emotion clouding the truth. I replayed every moment, every word, every look. And slowly, the pain turned into something sharper, something quieter, something patient. Because here's what they didn't understand. They thought taking everything from me would leave me with nothing. But they were wrong. They left me with truth. And truth doesn't disappear. It waits. The day they told me I was being released, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel joy. I felt ready. 2 years had taken a lot from me. But it had also taken something else. My hesitation, my doubt, my need to protect someone who had already chosen not to protect me. When I stepped outside, the world felt different. Not brighter, just clearer. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of freedom settle on my shoulders. And for the first time in 2 years, I spoke his name, Ayan. Not with anger, not with sadness, but with certainty. Because the man who walked out that day was not the same man who walked in. And the son who betrayed me was about to meet someone he no longer understood. They thought my story ended when those doors closed behind me. They were wrong. That was just the beginning. And now, I'm going back. Not to reclaim what was mine, but to reveal what they tried to hide. Because some betrayals don't destroy you. They prepare you. And the day I face my son again will be the day everything he built on lies finally begins to fall.